Hello everyone, it's me Uncle John. Today I am going to read S5 5012 Pyramids. I wonder why pyramids were built. Why did people sit on the roof? Roof was just about the best spot in an Egyptian house. It was cooler than indoors, especially under a shady canopy. People liked to sit and talk there or play board games. Who made mud pies? Bricks were made from river mud. Brick makers trampled the mud with their bare feet until it was sticky. They added bits of straw and reed to make the mixture firmer. Then they shaped the mud pies into bricks, which dried hard in the sun. Who had nightmares? Some Egyptians must have slept well, but the beds do look very uncomfortable. They were made of wood with ropes or leather straps instead of springs, and people didn't lie on soft pillows filled with feathers. All they had were wooden headrests. Who had floury feet? When Egyptian cooks made bread, they sometimes jumped into a huge bowl on the floor and kneaded the dough with their feet. Let's hope they washed them first. What's the world's staliest bread? Loaves of bread have been found in Egyptian tombs. No one has tasted them, though. The bread is thousands of years old and as hard as rock. Who had splendid feasts? Well, poor people certainly didn't. Pharaohs and rich people held a fantastic feast, where they ate juicy pieces of beef, mutton, or goose. The meat was sometimes barbecued and served with crunched onions or garlic, as well as spinach, leeks, peas, or beans. What was for pudding? Juice, figs, sweet melons, or pomegranates. Who looked really cool? Egyptian is a very hot country, and in ancient times people kept cool by wearing as little as possible. Ordinary workers just wore a simple cloth around their waist, but for the rich, the coolest fashion was graceful clothes made from the finest linen. Who liked to sparkle? Most clothes were plain white, so rich people added color and sparkle by wearing beautiful jewelry made from gold and colorful precious stones. Sometimes, for a special feast, they wore white cloth colors decorated with leaves, wild flowers, or glass-like beads. Poorer people's jewelry was made from copper and shells. Why did shoes wear out? Servants' shoes were woven from reeds which they gathered from the riverbank. The shoes didn't last long, particularly when the servants had to keep running around after their lunch, rich masters and mistresses. Who loved making up? Rich Egyptian women wore lots of striking makeup. Eyeshadows went on first, then a black line around the eyes, and finally rose lipstick and cheek blusher. The ancient Egyptians still look beautiful over 4,000 years later in their paintings. Why did women wear cones on their heads? Rich women pinned cones to their wigs for feasts and parties, but they wore cones of perfumed grease, not ice cream cone. As the greasy cones melted in the warm evening air, they gave off a sweet perfume. Who made the beeline for wigs? Pharaohs and rich people, anybody wore a wig on their head. The wigs were made of real hair, which was tied into hundreds of tiny plaits and held in place by sticky beeswax. Who played with lion? Nobody did if they had any sense, but young children did play with wooden lions and other toy animals. Children also had spinning tops as well as balls that rattle, and dolls with beads in their hair. Who played board games? Tutankhamun became pharaoh when he was only 12 years old. He loved playing a board game called Senet. After he died, a board was buried with him in his tomb. It's a beautiful set made of white ivory and a black wood called ebony. Did Egyptians like parties? Egyptians might have spent a lot of time building tombs. But they weren't a miserable lot. They loved music and dancing. At rich people's banquet, there were often shows with dancing girls, musicians, acrobats, and singers. Why is paper called paper? Well, the paper comes from papyrus, a tall reed that grows beside the Nile. The Egyptians discovered how to use the thready insides of these papyrus reeds to make a kind of paper. It was thicker than the paper we use today, but just as useful. What did Egyptian writing look like? The first Egyptian writing was made up of rows of pictures called hieroglyphs. Each picture stood for an object, an idea, or the sound of a word. Many of the hieroglyphs are quite complicated. They must have taken ages to draw. Which was the most dangerous animal? Egypt wasn't always a safe place. Wild bulls and lions lived in the desert, while hungry crocodiles lurked in the river Nile. Many Egyptians enjoyed hunting these animals, even though they could be dangerous. Did people have pets? Rich Egyptians had pets just as we do today, and they loved them just as much. Most people settled for a dog or a cat, but people who really wanted to show off kept pet apes and monkeys. What did Egyptians call a cat? Egyptian word for cat was meow, a cross between a mew and a meow. The Egyptians were probably the first to tame cat. They used them to catch mice in grain stores. How can you become an Egyptologist? Egyptologists are people who study ancient Egypt. To become one, you need to learn all about the history of Egypt and the things that have survived from the time. Reading books and visiting museums are the best ways to start. Why do mummies have X-rays? Modern science is a great help to Egyptologists. X-rays can show whether a mummy died from an illness or an accident. They can even tell whether they suffer from toothache. Where can you come face to face with a pharaoh? Egypt's largest museum is in the capital city of Cairo. Here you can gaze on the 4,000-year-old faces of the mummified pharaoh. Not all the pharaohs are here, though. Some are still lying peacefully hidden in their desert tomb. The end.